beautiful soul family, and welcome to the Walk On Podcast, the podcast where I try to demystify spirituality, personal growth and healing, and whatever else I feel like talking about. I'm your host, Britt Cannon, and this month's episode is called Question Everything. Lately, I have been thinking a lot about how the beginning of healing is curiosity. A lot of times it can feel like the beginning of healing is trauma, or the beginning of healing is frustration or loss or grief. And I do think that everything contributes to healing. I think everything is always trying to push us in the direction of healing. I think that the image I get in my head when I'm thinking about how the universe supports us along our healing journey is there's this trap door over our crown chakra, and all of our guides and ancestors are just hanging out there waiting for us to just open that door just a little bit. And they wait there with infinite patience, infinite love, infinite support. It's not a frustrated waiting. It's not an expectation riddled waiting. It's just any second now they're going to open that door and it's going to be wonderful. And whenever it happens, it's going to be wonderful because that's how the universe loves. I don't subscribe to a Christian view of God or spirit or the universe that is punitive or judgmental or, even interested in sin or anything like that. I don't believe in heaven and hell. I just believe that the universe is the embodiment of unconditional love, and that it doesn't matter to them when we do it. They don't experience time like we do. They're just here with us, loving us. Their energy can be everywhere at once, and they just want us to heal. They just want us to be the loving force that we're supposed to be, the authentic us that we're supposed to be. And they're cool with whenever it happens. They're super duper chill, just like my Tommy Bahama. It's spring. It's spring here. Have you noticed? I did florals last month. This month, it's a different kind of floral. It's like a Jimmy Buffett daddy floral situation. So curiosity. I like curiosity as the seed for healing more than any of those other things, because I feel like in my life it's yes, loss and struggle and pressure and mistakes and regret, all those things have informed my healing journey. They have been important along my path, but curiosity is light. Curiosity is just dancing through life. Curiosity carries this vibe of questioning, of being a feeling's coming up. Where's that coming from? I'm having a reaction that seems disproportionate to the situation at hand. I wonder why that is. I wonder why that person does that. I wonder why this. I wonder why that. I wonder. And eventually, you start, if you follow the curiosity, if you allow curiosity to lead you towards information, towards connecting dots, towards explanations, towards a better understanding of yourself, towards a recognition of your patterns and your wounds and your struggles. If you can even approach the emotional Everest of exploring your trauma and just who you are as a person, who you came here to be. I feel the start of astrology was curiosity, was just simply noticing. A lot of scientific discovery came from just being I wonder what happens if I do this and this, And I think that it would benefit all of us to exist in a place of curiosity instead of rigidity or judgment or shame or I don't know. I think I remember when I was younger, for a while, my grandmother was always a seeker. She was just like looking for the answer to like, who am I? Who is God? What's the truth? And because of that, she would sometimes go through phases where like we'd go to a bunch of churches to try them out or whatever. And the thing that always kind of like bugged me about Christianity in general is that there's this idea that questioning is wrong, that you're like, you're not doing a good job if you question your faith. And it's always been my takeaway that's like, if something can't stand up to a little scrutiny, it's like, is your faith even that strong to begin with? Um, I don't know. You tell me. I feel like I question my faith all the time. I actually identify as a skeptic because I'm just like, um, I'm just always like, I don't have any ego or expectation around like spirituality or intuition or the tarot or astrology. I'm just going into it with curiosity, which has been my relationship to it the whole time. And actually, what I love about spirituality, like true spirituality, as in like, I have a personal relationship with the universe, and me and my universe decide what my practice looks like whether it's Wiccan or totally intuitive or Buddhist or whatever, or an amalgamation of things that inspire me. Um, or like, I've been listening to a lot of Lady Gaga because Mayhem came out in the early days of March. And I've been listening to it a lot. And then that inspired me to go on like a full Gaga re-listen. And I was just thinking about the line from, what is it? I'll tell them my religion's you. What song is that? Is that Bloody Mary? I don't know. But it's like, if your religion, if your spiritual connection is love or sex or whatever, whatever brings you to the light is all right. I have an episode called that if you want to hear more about my take on how like it truly doesn't matter how you get there. However you get there is good. If it brings you to the light, it's good. And there's no wrong way to do it. And I love that spirituality, of course, there's like toxic corners of every belief system. But for the most part, what I've found is that like it's about going in yourself. It's about questioning yourself, asking yourself, noticing what resonates for you, what you resonate with, what you're drawn towards, what feels good, and also being open to shifting and flowing as you change your mind or as you grow and outgrow certain things. I think there's this thing in like spirituality where at certain points you're kind of drawn to certain teachers or certain styles, and maybe at first you need people who like speak with a lot of authority, like a Tony Robbins or like a Teal Swan, someone who's like, I have the answers. And as you grow, you kind of outgrow those teachers and you get to a place where it's like, oh, actually, I think I have the answers for myself, And then you start to be drawn to teachers who teach like a more advanced, kind of nuanced take on spirituality. Or like part of my journey was like finding a lot of people who the spiritual messages felt really right, but their politics were just like not it for me. They weren't doing enough critical thinking, they weren't doing enough analysis, their practice maybe wasn't trauma informed, or some like white supremacist stuff would slip out in their teachings. Some unconscious biases, I guess, is like a less judgmental way to say it. And then I would have to like move on to someone who was more in alignment. I just recorded, before I got on to this recording, my astrology report for the month of April, and themes of like authenticity, of alignment, of kind of shedding the old and like allowing yourself to be multifaceted, to be malleable, to change your mind, are coming up over and over again. And I feel like that being open to flowing is such an important part of curiosity and of healing by way of curiosity. It is the seed that eventually sprouts and grows and blooms into full-fledged healing. And the curiosity only gets stronger as you grow. I feel like one of the most amazing revelations and like experiences in my healing journey, there's some children screaming in the hallway, so you know, it is what it is. This is a Brooklyn apartment. Sometimes my podcast has kids screaming in the background. And wind. You can also hear the wind today. But it's like the more what I love about music or astrology or like art in general and spirituality too is that there's no limit to how much you can learn. And to a certain extent, it's like you're always going to feel like a novice because there's so much practice. There's just a whole legacy, you know, like years and years and years and sometimes centuries of work put into this art form or this philosophy or this practice. And it's like you'll never learn everything. You'll never get to the bottom of it. You'll never be like, check, I have mastered this thing and I know it all. You know, it's infinite. And while I think that can be unsatisfying or intimidating, I also find it really beautiful and really fulfilling and really humbling. And it keeps me in a place of like the Page of Pentacles, a passionate student, the student lost in his studies, caring for little else. And I just think that's part of staying inspired. It's part of feeling alive. It's part of feeling of kind of, you know, doing what the strength card talks about, which is taming your ego through love, through information, through sharing, through openness, through patience, instead of trying to tame it through like force of will or shame or judgment. As I've mentioned over and over and over again, shame has no place in healing. I don't think shame is a very good or useful thing at all. I think it mainly just suppresses our natural inclination to be authentic. I think like when you watch kids, they're just themselves. They, you know, before the age where they start developing like self-consciousness and stuff, or before people start shaming them for being who they are, or being weird or like whatever. Before they receive those messages, they're just like so free. And it's my goal to figure out how to embody that every day, every moment in my life. I just want to be myself unhindered. And a big part of that is curiosity. I think similar to music or astrology or even like social justice, or anything I really love that I love learning about. With yourself, there's like no limit to the amount you can learn about yourself. It's like your physical body is whatever age you are, but your soul is infinite. It has existed always because it's the energy of the universe. It's consciousness in and of itself. And because of that, there's no limit to what you can learn and discover about you. And I think if you greet yourself every day with curiosity and without the limitations of like, this is who I'm supposed to be, this is the role I'm playing, this is what I'm supposed to do, this is what I've been told I want. And I know a certain amount of that is kind of impossible to shed. You know, it's like if you're someone's mother, you're someone's mother. If you have a job that you have to do or that even that you love, you know, it's like I identify as a musician. It's not necessarily like part of my soul, but I do think it's what my soul chose to experience when I came here. And it does bring me a lot of joy and fulfillment and helps me learn about myself and helps me learn how I learn how to master things, learn how to make something fun when you also want to do it well. But you know, some of the roles, like we can choose to carry them with us or they can be very important to our journey, but the shoulds are more systemic and societal, I think. Those are the shoulds I'm talking about. It's like, you know, I'm a man, so I don't have feelings, or I'm in a relationship, so like I can never grow in ways that are outside of this relationship, or I'm a mother, so I'm not allowed to experience anything else. You know, I'm not allowed to prioritize my pleasure. I'm not allowed to experience rest. I'm not allowed to, you know, take care of myself sometimes, or I have to always be like the most patient, the most saintly, the most, you know, an infinite reservoir of giving. I'm not allowed to get tired. I'm not allowed to complain. I'm not allowed to get frustrated. You know, those shoulds really limit the freedom to be curious, the freedom to flow. And it goes back to that thing of questioning where it's like, you know, I think it's really important in a relationship to be like, am I happy? Is this going well? Do I want to keep doing this? I think sometimes the like resistance we feel with those kinds of ideas or philosophies is because we fear change more than we fear like complacency or stuckness or just like, yeah, being unhappy. Like there are plenty of people who are in relationships who've never checked in with themselves about it, who like when you talk to them at length, you're like, my guy, you're not having a good time. but they, it almost doesn't occur to them. You know, it's almost like it doesn't matter. Like the unknown is scarier than this terrible known, which is sort of what we're dealing with politically, systemically, with the two-party system and like the this mask off moment for the Democratic leadership and how there's this like divide where the centrists, like that's not cutting it anymore. Like these capitalist like fiscal conservative social liberals, whatever the fuck that means. It's like, can you really be socially liberal if you're not considering class? Like, I don't think so. I really don't think so. It's like the intersectionality has to be intersectionalitying for your politics to be like fully holistic. And if you're not considering class, then you're missing out on a lot of like the overlapping Venn diagrams. And if you still are like if you're funded by, let's say, like an oil company, like you're not going to be able to make decisions of integrity about like the climate disaster, or like taking care of the planet, or making moves that are good and sustainable and, you know, just like future oriented because you're worried about your money. You know what I mean? And they're not going to tear down the system when the big problem is white supremacist, capitalist, cis heteropatriarchy. And like you have to tackle all of those. You have to unpack all of those. You have to question all of those all the time in all your decisions, everywhere you go. Question your motivations, question your ego, question your unconscious biases. You know, this is where shame and unpacking it really comes into play, because it can be really easy, like when you're proven wrong or when someone calls you out for saying or doing something problematic. Like, because a lot of us were disproportionately punished when we were kids, for like little mistakes, you know, spilling something or talking at the wrong time or getting a little attitude or like having a bad day. You know, it's just like our dysregulated parents couldn't handle us being like kids. And I know sometimes that's hard. It's like hard to regulate your emotions when another person is just like constantly overstimulating you. But we have more tools now than our parents did back then, or their parents before that. You know, it's just like we're better than we've ever been in a lot of ways. But a lot of us have a lot of trauma around like making a mistake or being wrong or even conflict in general, because we have trauma around those experiences. So it's like if you make a mistake and someone calls you out, you may have a massive shame response. You may get super triggered. You may want to be really defensive or aggressive back, or just like cut the person off and ghost them, or find a way to protect yourself or get yourself out of the discomfort of that interaction. But if you can sit with the shame and be like, okay, I recognize this. I'm having a shame response. Let me just like ask for time or space, or take a moment, or just outright say, I'm having a shame response. I hear you. I want to take it in, but I just need a second to like regulate myself so I can be like the best version of myself for this conversation, right? It's okay to ask for that. It's okay to need those things. And recognizing that shame, like that's how we start to unpack it. And that's how we start to decide to put it down, to understand that it's not serving us, and to step into a much gentler, more patient, less punitive, and more just like open way of being. It's like, I came up with this metaphor on the fly the other day of if you picture your trauma amount like liquid in like a science beaker, that's like over a burner. And when you first sort of like come into adulthood, your trauma beaker, if you've experienced a lot of trauma, which I assume anyone listening to this show has, your level is like right at the tippy top, right? So if you add any heat to that beaker, that vessel, it's going to boil over and spill out right away. As you heal, as you unpack shame, most of all shame, most of us have like tremendous, active, just like very present shame bodies. And as you kind of unpack that and heal that and step away from that into a less judgmental way of being, or just being like, I don't know if I need to experience shame with this. It's like, whoopsie, I made a mistake. I don't really know how shame is going to serve me in this moment. I don't know. I don't think I need to feel it. I think I just need to be like, okay, I hear you. I'm ashamed. And then be like, I wonder why I feel so much shame. I wonder if this could be felt without all of the shame. I had this revelation recently, when it comes to conflict, how because my therapist is wonderful, she pointed out to me that I carried a lot of pressure around my feelings. I would almost reject my feelings like before I would even feel them. And if I was having to share them with someone else, it was like twice as hard, because it was like I wasn't just shameful within myself, but also like their reaction could elicit even more shame. And then it would become so hard to just like spit it out and say how I was feeling. And especially if it was like a negative feeling, like resentment is a big one, jealousy is a big one, insecurity, feeling left out, feeling triggered, like situations where a lot of times the fix is reassurance, either reassurance or like stepping away to regulate. And I couldn't get the reassurance because I couldn't even like own the feeling for myself and then understand it enough to share it with someone else. So instead, I was just either like giving in right away to get out of the discomfort, to just like avoid being rejected or punished, which is what I was used to because of my childhood and a lot of the situations that followed, the black and white thinking of like traumatized people, which is that you're either a good person or a bad person. You're either like right or wrong. You're either like a friend or an enemy. And navigating all of that just sort of reinforced a lot of shame that I had, because it's a bunch of traumatized people trying to be in community. I talked about this in my last episode. And everybody's dysregulated and everybody has shame and everybody's kind of stuck in black and white thinking. And so it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of grace. It takes a lot of radical acceptance. I think radical acceptance kind of is the antidote to shame, because it's like, oh, I made a mistake. I'm feeling all this shame. And now I want to just like, drink the shame away, or I want to fixate on a romantic partner and issues we're having, or I want to, whatever it is, like I just need a distraction. And this is where addictions come in, right? Like this feeling is so awful that I need to figure out a way to get out of it or numb it or distract myself or whatever. But if you can go a different way and try just radically accepting it and being like, okay, so I made a mistake and now I have shame. And like, what do I do from here? Like, I feel it, I recognize it, it's agony. Is it possible to kind of ride this wave until the feeling kind of feels itself out? You know, feelings sometimes are like a toddler throwing a tantrum. It's like when they're throwing the tantrum, a lot of times parents or caregivers get dysregulated because they're like, this person is angry at me, this person is mad at me, this person is like having feelings because of a boundary I laid or because of something I did. And it can sometimes trigger you like your parents trigger you. You know, it's hard to handle someone else's discomfort. This is part of the struggle of like laying boundaries, because you're like, I have to tell someone I love that something they did hurt me, or that I need something to change in the way we relate to each other, right? I've questioned the relationship. I've done a little check in with myself and been like, how are things going? Do I need anything to change? Have I changed in any way that I need to communicate? You know, is something coming up that we need to work through? You've done the questioning, you've done the check-in, and now it's time to like take it to the other person and share what you're feeling or thinking or whatever. And then they might get upset about it. And the thing is like, it's not, you can be reassuring, you can be comforting, you can be loving, you can be sweet, you can try to communicate as many ways as is possible to communicate something, but the other person's reaction is their reaction, right? It shouldn't change your boundaries if someone gets upset about it. And it shouldn't change someone else's boundaries just because you get upset about it. It doesn't mean it's bad or wrong or you're terrible to get upset. It just means that like the discomfort with other people's reactions, with other people feeling responsible for other people's feelings, is just like a trap. And it is impossible to really embody that in your life without feeling resentful, because it's not really your job to regulate someone else. It's their job to regulate themselves. And the best and most loving thing we can do for each other is speak the truth and communicate, is to ask for what we need. And if someone is unwilling or unable to give it, like, that's okay. It doesn't have to be acknowledged, or it doesn't have to like influence how we move forward from a negative place. It can be positive, it can be loving, it can be whatever it needs to be if we let it. But the same thing kind of happens with little ones when they start freaking out because they don't like the way something is going, and they want to control things, and they want to do what they want to do. You know, they're just like masters of impulsivity, and sometimes you have to give them structure or teach them how to be a human. And sometimes they freak out, and a lot of times parents can't handle the discomfort of their reaction to the boundary, right? And so they'll give in, and then you become like the parent who is all bark and no bite. And then they know that you're not going to stick to the boundary. And this is how we create someone as an adult who doesn't know how to listen to boundaries, because like no one's ever stuck to one with them. No one's ever given them a consequence. They've never had to deal with what that feels like or how to navigate that. That's why it's so important to practice this with your kids and to allow them to practice it with you, because it's really hard to feel belonging and feel in connection if you're not being seen, if you're not being felt, if you're not being understood, and if you're not like unconditionally positively regarded enough to kind of embody your multifacetedness in these connections. And if you're not a space where people can do that with you. And a lot of that, like creating space for that for other people in your life and allowing yourself to embody that multifacetedness, and also just like the natural state of like flawed that it is to be human, is putting down the judgment, putting down the shame. And funnily enough, it's like as within, so without. The more you unpack the shame and the judgment and the shoulds within yourself, the more grace you're able to give the people that are in your life, the more loving you're able to be, the more forgiving you're able to be, and the more nuanced you're able to be. You know, you can I mean, I think there's like many things that are true at once. It's like, it took me a long time to realize that we are our actions, like you are what you do. Your intentions, how you feel, it doesn't really matter as much as what you do. This helped me a lot with like my thoughts because I was dealing with intrusive thoughts for a long time. And then I realized through therapy that like I'm not my thoughts. Like I can have a bad thought or a scary thought or whatever. But I'm not acting on it, because I would have this like shame about like I had this intrusive thought and I'm a terrible person, and, and I realized that as I realized that I'm not my thoughts, I am my actions, I was able to kind of like loosen up and not give the thoughts so much attention, and then they kind of shrank and shrank and shrank until they don't really exist for me anymore. Like every once in a while I'll have one, but it's not constant like it was. And that's that like surrender, radical acceptance I'm talking about. It's like what you resist truly persists. And methinks the lady doth protest too much is such a vibe, because it's like, the way we when we judge someone else, we're also kind of judging ourselves. And when we're judging ourselves, that means we're suppressing something, because we're like, I'm rejecting this thing because it's so not in me. You hear straight people say this all the time, like, I have no problem with gay people. I'm just like, I don't understand it because I'm so the other way. And it's like, sure, Jan. But that leads to like a space of repression where you have to, like, you're trying to create so much distance from you and the other that whatever parts of that exist in you that's making you upset, they just get more subconscious. And when something is like buried in the subconscious, it may not be something you're consciously aware of, but it does come out in your behavior. And this kind of results in those things sometimes where like someone will point something out about you and you feel really offended and triggered, but you feel that because it's like it feels true, it resonates. And then that causes a shame response, right? Because it's like, oh God, someone saw the ugliness within me, the beast within, someone saw it. Oh no, I've been found out. When it's really like, when you release the shame, when someone says something that resonates or that feels true, it's a lot easier to kind of laugh at it or shrug it off, or be like, if I want to change this thing, if someone holds up the mirror and I don't like what I see, is it something I can work on, or is it something I need to accept, right? Serenity prayer. Control the things you can, change the things you can, accept what you can't, right? It really is that simple. And I really feel that curiosity is the foundation of this. It's like, I've been exploring some things, or kind of reconsidering some things that I really used to resonate with in every aspect of my life. It's like suddenly I'm very much back in contact with my family, and really interested in making community with them, and understanding all these things that I haven't understood for a long time. Like, I'm an adult. I have control over my life. I have control of who I'm in contact with. I have control over how much access someone has to me. Like, I have discernment now. I have boundaries now. I have a very strong sense of self. So it's really hard for someone to kind of tell me about myself in a way that I'm not already aware of, because I've been very curious about who I am and I have explored it. I know my faults, I know my wounds, I know my struggles, I know my strengths, and I can sit in all of that without shame, with radical acceptance and with openness. I'm kind of over this phase where I'm like making these hard declarations about like who I am and what I want, and like kind of, I've done this thing for a long time where I'm like, this is what I'm doing now, so this is what it is forever. And I've been proven wrong so many times that I'm finally realizing like, oh, I don't have to do that. I can truly live in the nuance. I don't have to swing my pendulum so far one way or the other. I can just be, and be myself. And like, leave space for all of that exploration, for all of that authenticity, for all of that nuance without having to be rigid in any way. And I was thinking about this because, sometimes it's really hard to change something that you're overly identified with. I really went through this when I was drinking, but like I really wanted to stop, but I was kind of having a hard time stopping. I wouldn't say that I was like, addicted, but I would say that I had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. And there was a point where it was no longer adding a lot positive to my life. I get really sick when I drink. It would throw me off mentally and I would get very anxious. I get hungover really easily. The gluten wasn't good for me. The sugar wasn't good for me. I was getting inflamed and just like, I also just didn't like the feeling of blacking out, and it would happen to me super easily because I just don't have like the constitution to hold my alcohol. And I don't have any interest in like building up a tolerance, like I did in college, which I was really proud of, like my tolerance for some reason. But I still blacked out a lot. Just like not a fun feeling. It would lead to a lot of shame overs for when people would tell me what I did or said or whatever. And I'm like an exhibitionist, stone sober. Like I really don't need the help. and but I was having a hard time. My dog just sneezed. I was having a hard time kind of moving on from that because I identified so hard with like being a party girl and like going out a lot and getting wasted or whatever. And eventually I had to realize like this is silly. Like I'm holding on to this because it's something I identified with, but curiosity, is it a healthy thing to identify with? Is it actually like a part of my core identity, or is it like just something I've been doing and for some reason I like identified with it? And there were many changes that came from the choice to finally stop drinking, which were like, losing some friends who existed in that space, only learning how to socialize without alcohol, which was very challenging. Learning how to perform without drinking, which was very, very challenging. There's just, and it led me to kind of question my relationship with weed too, which has been very helpful. I mean, I didn't stop getting stoned, but I definitely, it's one of those things that I questioned. I was like, do I need this? Am I overly identified with this? If it came time to where I felt inspired to let it go, would I have a hard time because of grief or whatever? And I was feeling this, or I was feeling, I guess, the absence of that feeling when it came time to let my family in again and be family with them again and like be in contact with them and stuff and open up to them, let them know me. I was like, I just did it. Like it felt right. The timing was right. It felt good. And so I did it. I let myself do it and it was wonderful. It's been amazing. Like it feels like, it feels like the miracle of my life. Like it feels like, to me, like proof positive that healing works, because when I left that space and that community, like the reason why I left is it seemed like it was never going to happen. I felt like I tried my whole life to like get these people to be family, to be community, to like know how much we all loved each other and be close and like stop gossiping and triangulating all the time. And just like, I just love these people so much. And I wanted that support system and I wanted that closeness. And it seemed like it was never going to happen, which is part of why I walked away. And then I did walk away. I fully leaned into walking away. And then we came back together, and in my absence, as just the same way that I've grown, they've grown too. And it feels like our paths are converging because we're in alignment. And I just went for it and did it. And then later I was sort of like, I didn't experience that thing, that resistance of like identifying as a person who was estranged from my family. That didn't come up for me. And I just thought that was really interesting because I feel like a few years ago it would have, But I've kind of been working on letting go of these shoulds, letting go of these kind of false identities. And I've gotten really used to the process of like peeling my onion layers back. So I think like this process of checking in, of questioning, of curiosity brings so many blessings. I think a lot about this Bruce Lee quote, which is there can be no creativity with ego rigidity. And I've been watching interviews with Lady Gaga all week, and she was sort of tempted in her career to kind of just like do the formula, like do the same thing over and over again. And that she sort of took a risk in being authentic. And sometimes the risk felt like it paid off, but sometimes it didn't. And how like if she hadn't stuck to her guns, she would have made work that she wasn't proud of, or like allowed herself to grow in the process, in her sound, in her philosophy, in her identity. And you know how some of the choices she's made like maybe felt weird from the outside, but they felt really true to her. And I think that's what that Bruce Lee quote is getting at, which is that like when you're in rigidity, it's really hard to tap into your intuition. It's really hard to flow. It's really hard. I think that's where resistance comes from, right? Is like ego rigidity. It's being like, it's like what we're dealing with systemically right now. Like the establishment is like unwilling, unable to make the changes that need to be made to create a safer, more loving, more sustainable, more equitable world to meet everybody's needs. We need to kind of adjust our mindset and think a little bit more outside the bun as to how we like do life, how we organize society, how we think about taking care of one another, checking our like unchecked consumerism, and asking ourselves like what we really need, what we really want, what's really good for us. And the rigidity in the people who hold the power, how hard they're clinging on to the past. I use this metaphor in my episode on resistance versus surrender, which is that, and I think also in my letting go episode, I like to picture life as like a river, and just imagine yourself kind of like floating down it. And sometimes it's a nice, calm, easy river, and sometimes it's bumping rapids, you know, it's a little chaotic and scary. And sometimes you fall out of the boat, you got to get back in. But you know, we go over these sort of waterfalls of change or these like diverging paths. And what happens when you resist is you're sort of like, you grab onto a boulder and you're like, I don't want to flow that way. I don't want to flow that way. Like, of course it's what I want. Of course it's where I'm heading. Like, that's where the water's rushing. It would be so much easier to just like let go, throw my hands up and enjoy the ride. But no, I'm going to hold onto this boulder. And then if I let go of the boulder because I get too tired, then I'm going to grab onto a root. And then when that slips out of my hand, then I'm going to grab onto the grass. And then when that slips out of my hand or comes out of the ground, I'm going to find another boulder to hold onto. And it's like the flow of life is trying to take you where you're supposed to go. And when you're holding on for dear life like that, when you're resisting change, when you're tapping into that ego rigidity place, you're just delaying the inevitable. And it's possible to delay that forever. You know, it's totally possible. You have free will to stay in the bad relationship, to stay at the dead end job, to never take a risk, to be alone for your whole life, even if you want to be in love because you don't know how to open up and tell someone how you feel, you know, to always have that toxic best frenemy situation, or to like do the formula, you know, the relationship escalator, the like normal career path that doesn't fulfill you. It's possible to never take a risk, to never put yourself out there, to never experience the tumultuous excitement of change. But it's not possible to kind of insulate yourself from grief forever, or regret. You know, I talk about this all the time, but I've connected with a number of people who are extremely avoidant and who say things like, I never let someone in. I never like feel like letting someone in until it's already too late and they're like fed up with me and they've moved on. And then I feel like, oh, I should have let them in. But at the time when they were like here and ready for it, I couldn't. And so I'm just like the king of regret, right? And that's so sad to me. And there have been many, many times where I like felt so sorry for myself that I've put myself out there a lot. Maybe it's my Jupiter and Aries in my seventh house. I don't know. When I want something, I go after it. And I've very rarely been the type to like sit back and wait for something to happen. Although I'm figuring out how to be a little bit more in that like receptive, like flowing energy versus like a sort of aggressive, like I need to know where everyone stands. I need to know what everyone is feeling. I need to feel like know where this is heading. I just like need all the answers right now. I'm just like a lot more patient and like chill than I used to be. And I'm also totally cool just like with me and my questions, you know? To not have answers doesn't really bother me at this point in my life. And I know I've been through this enough to know that the answers and the opportunities and the shifts will come. I just have to be open to them. I don't have to like aggressively pursue them, but I've been rejected a lot because I've put myself out there a lot. It's just like a numbers game, you know? But when I heard that and when I encounter people like that, I'm like, that's way sadder than dealing with a lot of rejection. I feel like regret is way harder than the pain, the momentary pain of rejection. Cause like that kind of regret can last forever. It reminds me of, I can't remember what the person in the movie was quoting, but it reminds me of this line from one of my favorite movies, Empire Records. 90s babies, Empire Records. Such a great movie. But there's this sort of like Buddha type character, Lucas, who says, I do not regret the things I have done, but those I did not do. And if you know where that quote is from, like what the movie was quoting, let me know. That's what it is, right? It's like you regret the stuff you didn't do, the chances you didn't take, the things you didn't try when you wanted to. And that's kind of worse than trying and failing, I think. But because you're always wondering, like, what if? Whereas if you just put yourself out there, if you just try, if it doesn't go well, then you're like, well, at least I know, you know? So I think what I'm getting at here is don't be afraid to question things. Don't be afraid to check in with yourself. Don't be afraid of the transformation that wants to occur over and over again in your life. I'm sure I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I heard this idea, this quote, this like truth once. It was on a like This American Life or Hidden Brain or something like that. But the person was talking about how we are never in a state of stasis from the moment we are conceived until after we die and our bodies are decaying. We've been in a constant state of change. We're never truly stagnant. Your body is always changing. Your cells are always regenerating. And if we can align our spirit with that feeling, you know, I'm never done. I've never reached the end. There's always another transformation. Even death itself is nothing but a transformation. And just because we don't know what lies beyond it doesn't mean that it has to be scary or bad. It's always about releasing control. Speaking of getting back in touch with my family, I actually saw one of my aunts in person recently, and she was telling me that my grandma, who had some narcissistic personality traits, and she was a big control freak, like very, very controlling. And she would really like freak out and have these like, really Karen type of meltdowns when things would get out of her control. And my aunt was telling me that she kind of fought the release of death, the transformation, the experience of death until the very, very end. And how someone told her that narcissistic people tend to struggle with death and crossing over because they don't know how to not be in control. It's like the only thing that they haven't been able to kind of manipulate their way out of, you know? And I think that this curiosity, this questioning, this openness, this willingness to flow, this embracing and dancing in the nuance is practice for like that final transformation that really isn't even final if you believe in reincarnation, because your body's just out there waiting for the right time to come back in and finish some business that you didn't finish in the previous lifetime. So if I could leave you with anything, it would be to stay curious. Check in with yourself. Don't be afraid to ask yourself, like, is this identity, is this um is this financial system, is this world, is this whatever, is this vibe, is this friendship, is this art I'm engaging with, are the clothes I wear, like how I present myself, my gender, like how is it all working for me? How do I feel about it? How did I come to these conclusions? I've been experiencing this amazingly liberating thing lately where I feel like I'm really getting at my core wounds. And lately, I've been kind of plucking these limiting beliefs out of my head and being like, is this real? Is this true? And a lot of times it's not. And when I put it down, the way that I open up is just like incredible. Like I just keep using the word miracle. Like it feels like I like blessings are falling in my lap. Like miracles are happening every day. Getting back in touch with my family. Being able to just like play lead guitar when my whole life I thought, even as I was learning guitar, as I was playing guitar, I was like, I'm a girl. I can't play guitar. And so I didn't think I could, even as I was doing it. Certain things about, like, I'm realizing through talking to my family that I had this belief that was from my grandmother because I was her little favorite, her little meal ticket, her little golden child. You know, she wanted to be the momager to my Kim Kardashian. How she triangulated me from everyone else and kept me separate, and sort of fed me or encouraged this belief I had that I wasn't likable, that I didn't fit in, that, you know, I just had a hard time, or that they didn't get me, or they didn't like me, or want to know me, or whatever, you know, just this othering of myself that I carried into literally every group situation, every job, every friendship, every relationship I've ever been in. I had this distance between me and everyone else because I thought, people don't like me. I am unlikable. I am unlucky. I am not chosen, right? And then because I believe that about myself, I kind of, it's like chicken egg, you know? I sort of was attracted to or sought out situations where I wouldn't be chosen, where I wouldn't be liked, where I wouldn't be understood, where I would be overlooked. But I also kind of always played it safe and cowered and held myself back. This is how I know that regret feeling, right? Like I, in certain ways I would put myself out there, but in certain others I like missed opportunities, or certainly missed opportunities to shine, because I was holding back, because I was just like not sure of myself, not sure of who I was, not sure of my value. I remember having this realization once where I was like, every time I get a crush on someone, I suddenly forget my value. Like I suddenly forget everything that's good about me, or the reasons why someone would love me or care about me. What is that about, you know? And it turns out it was about some limiting beliefs. It was about trauma. It was about some things that I really thought were true about me that it turns out are not. And letting them go has been one of the great joys of my life. And I feel like I'm constantly discovering new layers to my potential, and to the ways that I like and love myself, and the ways that other people like and love me too. And I just feel like inner peace. I just feel so at ease. And where I used to feel a lot of like fear at expressing myself, you know, that throat chakra was locked up tight. And I've been seeing in all of my readings, with for all my clients and friends, it's just there's this theme of like finding your voice, speaking your truth, uncovering your authenticity, getting into the space of questioning, and curiosity, and releasing yourself from the things that are no longer in alignment with you and maybe were never in alignment. And I think stepping out of that rigidity is how you get there. Um, Life has forced me into surrender by making things like so out of my control that I had no choice. And now, because my life is stable, because I have time to like think about all this and consider it, because I'm so much more patient, I'm so much less scared. My beaker, where it used to be filled to the tippy top, is maybe like, I'm always going to have trauma, I'm always going to have struggles, but it's like less than a quarter of the way full. And because of that, I just have a lot more bandwidth for like being proactive with these things. And I know the value of questioning now. I trust the process of questioning, and I'm not afraid of the change that questioning could potentially bring. I feel like I trust my path, and I trust where it's taking me. And I know that even when something is difficult, I know that I have within my power the ability to have it, to use it for my highest good, to allow it to transform me, to make me more loving, more generous, more open, more full of like grace and patience and understanding, and less in a place of shame or power over or striving or pressure or perfection. I've just let all that go. And it has opened me in ways that really kind of shock me. It makes me brave. It makes me magnetic. Like, I don't know, just opportunities, connections, like experiences. Just a lot of joy has entered my life. A lot of fun, a lot of openness, and certainly a lot of like intuition and flow. And I felt this way from the beginning of my healing journey. Just like, to unpack all this, to unburden myself from all this feels so fucking incredible that I just want to like give it to everyone else. Like, everyone deserves to feel this. Everyone deserves to feel this free. Everyone deserves to feel this happy. Everyone deserves to feel this loved and supported by the universe, by the people around them, by themselves, from within themselves. Everyone deserves to just like constantly be bombarded with feelings of gratitude, because they're exactly where they're meant to be, and they know it. The Walk On podcast is a production of Walk On Productions. It is written, recorded, produced, edited, and marketed by me. That's right, all by my lonesome. This is truly an independent production and a labor of love, so every little bit of support counts. You can support me by liking, commenting, or sharing this episode. You can follow me on social media. The podcast content is at walkon_pod. And my personal account with my music, my dancing, my writing, and everything else is Brit_that's_it. You can book a service with me. I offer tarot readings, astrology consultations, a mentorship service where we meet once a week and discuss your blocks to abundance, to love, to self-acceptance. I also offer voice lessons, which can be just learning how to sing. It can also be throat chakra healing that teaches you how to lay boundaries and speak your truth. Or it can be gender-affirming voice lessons. You can book all of those at my website, which is britcannon.me/services. You can explore the other pages on my website to listen to my music. I have a few singles out. I have an EP I released. You can go watch my burlesque performances. You can also buy my book of poetry, Flight of the Final Girl, which explores my generational trauma through the lens of horror movies I love. You can book me for your event, to perform, to do tarot readings, to whatever you want me to do for money at the email brit@britcannon.me. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. Happy healing.